I'm now going to show you a very quick project, a glasses case, it could be a phone case, and you can adjust the sizes according to what you're making. And we're going to use the Vlieseline Style-Vil Fix. Now the Style-Vil Fix is a fusible foam, and if you want more information with regards to it, then check out one of the other videos. I'm going to show you how to fuse the Style-Vil onto the reverse of your fabric. Now the Style-Vil Fix has a fusible side, and you can hear it has a rough side, so you could either run a pin across that side or alternatively just your finger. On the other side, the smooth side, this is the non-fusible side. So I tend to lay the Style-Vil Fix with the fusible side facing me and then place the wrong side of the fabric that you're wanting to fuse on the top. Now the Style-Vil Fix likes to be fused with a damp cloth, and when I say damp cloth, this is just a piece of calico that I've ran up under the tap. I've really squeezed all of the water out, so it's just going to give me a little bit of steam, but it's not going to overly wet the product. And leave it for about 10 seconds and then just move the iron along. Now it's really important that you fuse the Style-Vil Fix correctly. And also it's extremely important that when you've finished fusing it, you leave the product to lie flat. It will dry. What happens is, as we're heating the glue on the fusible product, it's melting. And if we were then to move it around too quickly, it could create little air bubbles. And subsequently that would give you a little air bubble on your finished product, which is not what we want. Now as an alternative, if you didn't want to have this wait time and you didn't want to fuse it, you could use the alternative product, which is the Style-Vil. The Style-Vil is exactly the same, but it isn't fusible. And if you want more information with regards to the Style-Vil, then please check out the video. So I've fused the Style-Vil Fix onto the reverse of my fabric, and I'll lay that piece on my table with the right side facing me. And the other piece, which is going to be my lining piece, I'm going to lay with the right sides together so the wrong side of this fabric is facing me. The next thing you need to do is to measure down 2.5 inches from one of the short ends. If I just put a line there, and you could either mark it with a pen or a pencil, or you could use one of the seam creases if you wanted to and literally just do a mark. Once you've done that, you then take one of the corners and fold it down to that line and just give it a little press. Now what we're doing is we're creating this angle here. Now if I was to cut this off, I wouldn't allow for my seam allowance, and we work with a 1/4 inch seam allowance in patchwork and quilting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 1/4 inch seam allowance from that crease line. So can you see here, there's your crease line, and that's the seam allowance. I'm now going to trim this area off on all 3 pieces. You could either use a rotary cutter, or you could just use a nice sharp pair of scissors. Now the next thing to do is to either pin or clip the 3 pieces together, and then we're going to take it to the sewing machine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sew around the 2 long edges, the shaped side across the top and down the other long edge, leaving this short edge open. You can use a walking foot when you're using a Style-Vil Fix because it is quite thick. However, you will find that the Style-Vil Fix sews beautifully on a normal sewing machine using a utility foot. The stitch length, I would have at least 2.5. You could in fact increase your stitch length to 3 if you wished. So I'm going to sew up one side, and when I come to the end, I like to sew off the edge because it gives me a nice neat corner. I'm just going to turn it round, and I'm going to sew all of the sides. So on the angle, you're in fact sewing on that crease or that mark that you created earlier on. down all the sides, leaving the bottom open. And what we're going to do now is to turn it through this gap. So I've now brought my cutting mat over because what I want to do is to prepare the binding, which is going to cover that open edge that we had and just make it nice and neat. So what you'll need from your piece of fabric is a piece of fabric that is 1 inch by the width, which is just over, make it 4 inches and you'll have plenty. Use your rotary cutter. And what I've done is this is just a scrap of fabric. So I've cut down one edge to make a nice, neat side, popped it round, cut it down that side. And then if I just move that out of the way, then I can quickly iron this in half, like that. And then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to sew it along that open edge. So we've turned the glasses case through, we have the binding. We're going to match up the raw edges of the binding with the raw edges of that short edge. And what you want to do is to have the outside of the fabric facing you. So this is the outer fabric. And we are just going to stitch this in place. And this is just going to neaten up all of those raw edges. So stitch that there. We're going to trim off the excess, turn this over, and I actually like to hand stitch this in place just for neatness. However, you could do this on the machine as well. So we've got the binding on. This is the inside fabric, this is the outer fabric laid in front of you. Now, can you remember when you did this angle here? So all you're going to do is to bring your case up towards you. And this time you will need some quilt clips. Clip the side and we're going to stitch down each side of the glasses case. You've got quite a bit of thickness going through your sewing machine here because obviously we have now 2 layers of the Style-Vil Fix and 4 layers of fabric. And a little tip that I would give you is if you have a walking foot or a dual feed foot as they're sometimes called, then pop it on. You'll definitely need to increase your stitch length to about 3. And the big mistake that you can make is to try and start and sew onto the fabric. It makes life a little bit difficult and sometimes your threads can disappear down to the feed dogs. So a little suggestion that I make is that you bring your foot so it's a little bit further in, and you might think, well, I'll have a gap, but that'll be covered in a second. Lower the feed dogs and then lower your needle into your work. Do 1 stitch forward and then do a reverse stitch to the start of your project. Once you've done that, you can then stitch forward. And you're going to do that on both sides and just take your time. And when you get to the very top, just repeat that action and do stop at the top, and we'll do a couple of reverse stitches just to hold everything in place. Now, even though you're going through 2 layers of Style-Vil Fix and the 4 layers of fabric, your machine will cope with that no problem at all, regardless of the machine you have. What I would highly recommend is that the needle that you have in is a size 90, and I'm just using a normal standard cotton thread here. You're going to repeat that on both sides, and I'll show you how to finish it off. So what I did was I've stitched down both sides, and then just as a feature I've stitched along the bottom. That's not necessary, but I just think it finishes off quite nicely. Now it's entirely up to you for your closure. You could pop on one of the snaps, which are widely available. You could add a little bit of Velcro on, and of course you could put a button on there as well. Once you've done that, it's all ready for you to take your glasses off, pop them in, close it up, and doesn't that look much nicer than your standard glasses case? As you can see, Vlieseline has a wide range of products, each with different properties and benefits for your projects. You can view the whole range on the Vlieseline website, where you can download the brochure, which has detailed information on all of the products across our 4 categories.